Good morning, class, and welcome to week 2 of Logic and Critical Thinking. The first week we went over the Euthyphro dilemma and how thinking Socratically related to critical thinking. We also read the Euthyphro dilemma, or the Euthyphro rather, and hopefully you listened to the audio file of the Euthyphro. So you got to see the questions and answers, or you got to listen to the questions and answers between Socrates and Euthyphro. This quick video will sort of be a supplementary video to chapter 1. I want to discuss a bit of the latter two articles. They're excerpts from Why the Geese Shrieked by Isaac Singer, as well as The Shaman and the Dying Scientist by Alan Reading. And I'm looking at the study questions here, and this is after you've read the brief excerpts from those two articles. So you can either decide to do a study question from the Euthyphro or the study question from these two articles, or these two excerpts. And so if we look at the first study question, it says, put yourself in the place of the child narrator of Singer's story. Which parents do you identify with and why? So the geese, after they're being prepared to be eaten, they're still making noise. And the father in the story thinks that there is a supernatural explanation for why they're making noise. And the mother feels it's a completely naturalistic explanation for why they're making noise. And as you read through the story, you find that the mother is correct, that there's a perfectly rational, naturalistic explanation for why they're making noise. One thing to consider is the difference between what we might call this supernatural explanation and this rational, naturalistic explanation, and the distinction might not be as clear as we think. So, for example, later on when we deal with what we might call pseudosciences, one of the descriptions will be this appeal to mystery. And so we might identify the supernatural explanation as an appeal to mystery. And therefore we don't have all the explanation. There's still something mysterious about the explanation. And that might be one way to value the naturalistic explanation as opposed to the naturalistic explanation. And this might be a point of the second article of Why the Geese Shrieked. The first article being the Euthyphro. And in this case, the naturalistic explanation wins out. But if we just think of cause and effect, right? If there's a certain cause, there's a certain effect. And we might presuppose, we might not even consider the distinction between natural and supernatural. We just see cause and effect. Then the distinction might not be as clear as we think. And this is sort of seen in the third article, which is The Shaman and the Dying Scientist. So the dying scientist has tried all of the possible naturalistic remedies or treatments, and nothing's working. But the shaman thinks that he can cure him, and so the scientist tries the treatment and is cured. And so we might say, wow, what is this a supernaturalistic explanation or a naturalistic explanation? And this is somewhat difficult. Now, many in the past have said, oh, it must just be the placebo effect that cured the scientist and not the ritual that the shaman does. But this doesn't really solve the problem, because the placebo effect, given the naturalistic worldview, that doesn't really make much sense either. We've just observed that there is a placebo effect, but we haven't really explained it scientifically. It is a bit of a mystery to us, to use that word again. And so is saying that something is the placebo effect just another way of appealing to mystery? And so these two articles are sort of antithetical to each other, or they bring up the different points. In the first article, perhaps, well, it's pretty clear that the naturalistic explanation wins out. In the second article, or the third article rather, if we count the Euthyphro as the first, it's unclear exactly what happens. And so if you decide to do questions 1 or 2, sort of keep this dynamic in your mind between what counts as a naturalistic explanation or a rational explanation, and what counts as an appeal to mystery, and whether there's that clear of a distinction between the two. If we scroll down to the exercise questions, there's one that sort of relates to this as well. It's the last one on 1 part 2. It says, do you think there are events for which there are no rational explanations? Why or why not? And this, I think, really gets at the whole premise of critical thinking to a certain extent. If there are things with events with no rational explanations, then how do we approach thinking about them critically? Or can we think about them critically? If we can't, for example, then other questions take on new meaning, such as the first, the last question of the study questions, I believe it is. Scroll up. How would you respond to someone who asked, "Why be reasonable?" Right? Now, if it was in relation to an event, for example, that did not have a rational explanation, that would be quite different from one that did. And so what this second and third article do is they sort of supply contrast or provide contrast to this idea of critical thinking. How do we go about providing rational explanations to events? What counts as rational? What counts as what we might say appeal to mystery? And how do we make the distinctions in how we label certain phenomena, such as the placebo effect? Is that a rational explanation? Is that appeal to mystery? So these are just some thoughts for you as you go about answering one study question and one exercise question. I'll post this video within the assignment itself, and this will be due on Friday. Thank you.